Thank you, colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants. First of all, let me thank you all for attending this webinar with such a catchy title, Water Scarcity, Abundance of Women. The event is organized by the Land and Water Division in collaboration with our Social Policies and Rural Institution Division, ESP for the acronym here in FAO. Thanks to the initiative of the Global Framework on Water Scarcity in Agriculture, the WASAG, and especially one of the WASAG members, the Women for Water Partnership, which is one of the 68 institutions that forms the WASAG Partnership. Let me thank in advance the organizers and the presenters who will share the insight with us in this extremely important and timely topic. Particularly wish to welcome our guest, our special guest, our dear friend, Ms. Gerda Verburg, Director of the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, former Special Representative of the Kingdom of Netherlands to FAO, former Chair of the Committee on Food Security, a long CV that Sasha will let us know in a minute. Gerda will deliver the keynote address to us. And thank you very much for making yourself available. I know that was short notice and you have a busy schedule. So, and we understand that you have to leave shortly, so your presence is much appreciated. I also would like to thank Anamika and Michaela Maletto for accepting the WASAG invitation to be with us today, and for Sasha Koshima for moderating the event. It's a pleasure to do. Water scarcity, as we know, affects all continents, with the agriculture sector being the largest water user, accounting for globally for about 70% of all water withdrawals. And according to the UN Synthesis Report 2018, on water and sanitation, more than 2 billion people live in countries experience high water stress. 44 million people lack access to safe water. And when FAO decided to promote and launch the WASAG, it was during the climate COP in Marrakesh in 2016. We are aware, just like today, of the critical role that women play in managing water resources, especially in agriculture, food security, and nutrition. Today, with the COVID-19 pandemic, women have a greater role to play, not only in managing water for agriculture, but mostly for hygiene and sanitation at the household as well as at the community level. This new reality must be taken into account in our actions from now on. It's going to stay with us, and we have to face it and handle it. Women represents 50% of the agricultural workforce in developing countries. In certain countries, it's even more. They still face severe constraints to raise production and productivity due to limited access to water resource, to agriculture service, to markets, to employment. They are often excluded from decision-making in management systems and in resource allocation, although their labor burden exceeds the one of the men and includes a higher proportion of unpaid household responsibilities. They often lack formal rights to the land they farm and to the water resource needed for their livelihoods. They have little opportunity to influence natural resource governance decisions and practices in their communities. So women often face widespread barriers in rural labor, including rural labor market, and are trapped in informal, sometimes trapped in informal low states and low skilled and poorly paid jobs without legal or social protection. Women are hardly consulted policies and programs aimed at enhancing agriculture on water management. I know I'm not telling you anything new, but we have to look at how to overcome this situation. It's important to ensure equal provision for men and women to rural service, infrastructure, especially for water, and build on their knowledge, their skills, and their abilities. Many efforts are still needed to increase women representation in local institutions, in governance mechanisms, to include them in decision-making, in households, in communities, and in policy making. The time saved for providing women with reliable access to water and irrigation through sustainable agriculture and water management can reduce the household burden to free time, allowing them to participate in income generation activities, in equal pay activities, in equal conditions to men, and in other activities as well. Many UN bodies, several SDGs highlight the importance of gender equality, including water resource management. For example, the General Recommendation number 34 of the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women considers rural women access to land and water resource a fundamental right. FAO's policy on gender equality provides a framework for guiding efforts to achieve equality between women and men in sustainable agricultural production and rural development for the elimination of hunger and poverty. The organization supports member countries to ensure gender equality in the access and management of water resources, in analyzing, promoting data analysis on sex disaggregated data, designing of gender responsive agriculture management projects, addressing gender issues in water governance, and promoting innovative and labor-saving technologies and practices. So we are here to learn, to discuss on how to accelerate the path towards equality, facing the new reality that is ahead of us. I trust we all benefit from this webinar. For instance, we are currently engaged in the development of the WASAG new strategy. We are going to discuss it in a few days under the leadership of the WASAG Steering Committee. So this webinar will certainly bring positive influence on the gender aspect in the upcoming WASAG strategy. Let me thank again our colleagues from the Women for Water Partnership, the colleagues from the Social Policy and Rural Institutions Division, our WASAG Secretariat for organizing the event, and especially for you to have joined us. It's a great honor to be here and to learn from you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Eduardo. And now I would like to present our high-level address and introduce Ms. Gerda Verburg, coordinator of the Scaling Up Nutrition Movement, and also formerly the FAO representative of the Kingdom of Netherlands. Ms. Verburg was also the chair of the Global Agenda Council for Food and Nutrition Security of the World Economic Forum, chair of the UN Committee on World Food Security, and speaker in the Dutch House of Representatives on Economics, Energy, and Innovation, as well as Minister of Agriculture, Nature, and Food Quality, and the chair of the UN Commission on Sustainable Development.
There, please.
Okay, a big welcome to you, Gerda. The floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Because maybe there was another list, but I would only invite you to continue if you would announce that I'm also a runner, a marathon runner, and a horse rider. But it's not necessary to announce it. Thank you very much for having me. As we speak, I'm not representing the Kingdom of the Netherlands, but you have people, Mariette Verhoef is there, and I presume Anamika is also a representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, given her name. But I am representing the UN because the Secretary General of the UN is my boss right now. Having said this, I am extremely happy to join your meeting because the topic is so crucial. Not only because I am aware, because I'm a farmer's daughter, and when I was 5 years old, I was already taught a song about water, how to treat water, how to be cautious with water, because water is vulnerable and at the same time very valuable. And nowadays we, because this is already more than 50 years ago, nowadays we experience it even more. Water is more and more also a reason for conflict and fights. So the topic you have at the table is extremely important and connected with almost every part of life. We used to say that nutrition, the Sun Movement is focused on scaling up nutrition. We work with 61 member countries who want to improve nutrition, which is an investment in physical development, but also cognitive development. But I realized that, and we used to say that nutrition is impacting at least 12 out of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. But I think that water is at least doing the same. Good water is at least, quality water is at least impacting 12, if not more, of the Sustainable Development Goals. So it's a crucial thing to keep the world turning around and keep human mankind going. So I would like to commend you for this, but I also would like to share a few of my observations with you dealing with the topics. This afternoon, before I joined your meeting, I was a keynote speaker in the launch of the Global Nutrition Report. And the Global Nutrition Report this year was on equity. And what you can read in the Global Nutrition Report is that inequality, inequity is still huge. It is, and it is even more showcased now in this new crisis, because those who are already left a bit behind are even more vulnerable. They don't have social protection. They don't have social networks very often. They don't have social security. If they lose their job or they are in a lockdown, how can they earn or make money? These little street vendors or the subsistence farmers, very often women, we know it. So it's showcasing that something needs to be done. And for women, because in many countries you have minority groups, you have poor people in general, but women are already unequal in many countries for years, and something has to change structural. Now you are all motivated because you're coming from different backgrounds, you're able to build an agenda, and I would like to make some recommendations to you, also coming from my own background. I'm a lucky one. I was born and raised on a farm. Mariette Verhoef knows, I think so, because she knows one of my sisters. I'm one of 10 children. I have 7 brothers and 2 sisters, but my parents decided to bring us up in a totally equal way. And they refused to treat us or bring us up or send us to in a different way, and they refused to make different decisions on which education we would follow. We were encouraged to learn to the best potential we had, because we were all given our talents, and we should be encouraged to use our talents to develop ourselves and to create our own future, but equally to take responsibility for others, share with others, and make this world a better place for others as well. And I think this is still something to be extremely happy about and proud of, because I think that if we would engage in a conversation about this, it would be showcased that many of us have different experiences in this. And in my work, I meet women who are brave, who are in the forefront, who do not shy away from taking the floor and demanding recognition. But they used to say, we have to come from so far because we are born and raised as second-class citizens, as girls, and our mothers and our fathers and our families and our habits and our culture are all focused on this inequality, not giving us legal rights, not giving us access to starting material, to land tenure, to water tenure, to whatever. And one of them told me, listen, first, my father had to take care of me. And when I married, I wasn't independent at all. I was not equal at all, because then I was suddenly dependent on my husband. So, I mean, there is a lot to do there. And with your background, you can be champions for equality. And I would like to invite you, please continue to be this champions for equality. Because there's a lot to do. As a politician, I've been in politics for 13 years myself, 9 years in parliament and 4 years as a minister. My suggestion, I have learned that being modest doesn't bring you far. And asking for recognition doesn't bring the recognition that you want to see. So my suggestion to you is, be determined to get the recognition, because Eduardo is right. Women deserve a lot of recognition, because women are on a daily basis worldwide, for instance, spending 200 million hours a day to collect water for the whole family. And of course, this is unpaid and it's still ongoing in 2020. But recognition is not there. And if it's there, ask Eduardo, and I will be happy to learn about this conversation, how FAO is investing in this recognition, in this equity, in this equality of women. Let me tell you, and I don't blame FAO for it, but it's just not happening if women do not stand up and are determined to develop a strategy to get the recognition they want. And how to do this? Well, I would say set your priorities. I have seen that the Water for Women Partnership and the WASAG, they are complementary to each other. And if I think about the future, it could be a smart combination of the rural area and the urban area. Now, let me tell you, in the years to come, the decades to come, the rural and the urban area will need each other more than ever. And smart cities are already building smart partnerships with the rural area in order to provide them with the food they need, with the fresh water they need, with the nature and the environmental space they need. And my suggestion would be make use of this in building a joint agenda. And then work on leadership programs. Train people, teach people, and make them a candidate for a position, and then lobby for them to get them in this position. Don't be shy, don't be modest, because men are not modest at all. Once a woman enters a position that they wanted to get, they said, well, it's this equality thing, it's a gender politics. They didn't go for the best, they needed to take a gender. It's still happening, and observing your smile, I can see that you are recognizing. Then set your policy, have 2 or 3 champions, find them and push them until they are there. And then be extremely proud of them. And the other way around. Don't start to criticize them, because let me be honest, very often women are criticizing other women because they don't behave very female anymore, because they talk too much boardroom language, because they are not investing enough in their children, or they're forgetting their family, etc. Do we criticize men this way? No. So go for it, champion them, cherish them, and make sure that they are a champion for more women in that space. I am 60 something right now, and one of my main goals is to encourage more women, to encourage young women, to encourage all women to not be modest, but to be aware of their talents and their capacities, and to step forward and say, hey, you need to take me, because I'm determined to make the best out of this position. So be competitive, win. If you are in a fight for election, then be proud of yourself, but also be proud of all women, because your victory is shining on all other women. And then continue to do so. So build a strategy in which you identify, we want to have a women there, we want to have a women there, want to have a women there, and we encourage them to keep a network, to build a network until gender equality is really effect in day-to-day life. All right, back to another thing. This year, we would have the Nutrition for Growth Summit, hosted by the Japanese government, and water and sanitation as indispensable for good nutrition and for good food systems and for healthy diets would be on the agenda. Now, we all know that the Olympic Games are postponed right now, They will be organized next year, and the Nutrition for Growth Summit also will be postponed. My suggestion is make sure that water and Women for Water and WASAG are there with an agenda on how to make water available for all and improve the position of women farmers. The same count for the Food Systems Summit. The Secretary General of the United Nations, for the first time in his entire career, which is now, I think, 2.5, almost 3 years, has decided to host a summit on food systems, because we all know that our current food systems are bankrupting our health systems. Our way of consumption is not healthy, and most of the diseases and death are now related to food. Obesity, NCDs, but also still micronutrient deficiencies, and in many countries still undernutrition, of course. But it's bankrupting our health system, and in this COVID crisis, we learned that people with overweight or obese people, or people already with a foodborne disease, are more vulnerable than others. And at the same time, we know that our current way of food production is also exhausting the planet. And to bring these things together, the Secretary General has taken the decision on the invitation of the Rome-based agencies and a few more, amongst them the Sun Movement. He will host this summit, in which food production, the whole food value chain, and food consumption will be front and center. And my invitation and suggestion to you will be, make sure that water is reflected there, that the role of women is recognized there. I will be there in one way or the other, so I will champion women anyhow, but I think that your partnership should be recognized, and you should have a stake there, a very action and result-oriented agenda that can be helpful and be recognized as one of the ways of getting out of the current problems, investing in healthy people, investing in a healthy planet, contributing to the Sustainable Development Goals, the Agenda 2030, and at the same time leaving no one behind by ending all forms of equality. So this is what I'd like to say to you. This is what I'd like to share with you. Go for it. Never give up. Tell your stories. Share your emotions and your victories with others, because storytelling and encouraging and engaging young generations is still extremely important. And young generations are looking for opportunities to go for it and to do something, because they also care about society and about our planet. So this is what I wanted to share with you, and I wish you all the best. And I'm looking forward of hearing more from you, either on the Nutrition for Growth Summit or the Food System Summit, or in one of our 61 member countries of SUN. Thanks a lot.
Thank you very much, Ms. Verburg, and to share with us the insight and the advice, and being the bring to light the inequality, and also the champion of women forward in these various opportunities. Thank you very much. And now I would like to introduce our next speaker. Today's key presentation, a keynote, will be made by Ms. Anamika from Women for Water Partnership, who is also a member of WASAG. Anamika has 40 years of career on women, water, and sustainable development issues, and has served in various leadership and advisory capacities in both government and non-government organizations. She will share the insight gained through the Women for Water Partnership work on mainstreaming gender in water scarcity for agriculture. Ms. Anamika, you have the floor.
Thank you very much, Sasha. Dear ladies and gentlemen, I'm so delighted to talk to you about a topic which is so close to my heart. But first of all, I would like to explain the title to you, because if you understand the title, you have got the message of today. In water scarce area, there are many women because the men left. So therefore, there is an abundance of women. The women who are living in these areas, they know how to cope with water scarcity. So if you use their knowledge and expertise, the performance of your program will double or even triple. So these are the golden opportunities. You can double or triple your results by including women everywhere. I would like, before going into the matter, I would like to share with you that we have an assignment for WASAG, and the objective of the assignment is that we write a position paper on the role of women in activities of WASAG and strategies for the 6 different working groups to make sure that women are not left behind. And I will explain who we are. We are a federation of 28 members organizations representing approximately 1.5 million women. We love diversity, and that you can see in our composition. We have women up in the very remote rural areas, women groups who are member, but also very high-level professional groups of business women or water experts, you name it, and they are with us. What binds us is access to water, be it drinking water, water for agriculture, for hygiene, for business. In short, water for all types of uses. And we position women as partners and experts in the governance and management of water. That is where we advocate for. In order to address the position of women and to change us, there are 5 essential topics, and they are interlinked. The main messages which I will bring in this presentation are: include women in decision making at all levels and throughout the entire program cycle, from design to budget allocation to evaluation, everywhere. Ensure also that there are sufficient resources to make that happen, and that women have access to land, water, and other productive resources. Collect data, analyze these data, learn from the data, and don't lose them through aggregating. That is these are, and then create the conditions, for example, by setting up vocational training programs for women and girls. History tells us that it takes time, unfortunately, because already in 1992, the Dublin Principles were embraced by the world, telling us that women play a central role in the supply, management, and safeguarding of water. Now I'm going back to our assignments. We carried out a survey amongst the 6 working groups, and the response was amazing. We got 100%. Now that never happens. And I think that is a show of the huge commitment of the working group to this assignment. And one of the questions, and one of the WASAG has commitments. They are being called the prior commitments. One of these commitments is very much linked to the assignment. It's prior commitment 17. It recognizes the essential role of women in smallholder farmer It tells you to reach out to women, youth, and the poor farmers, make the invisible visible, and leave no one behind. We asked the working groups how they are dealing with this commitment 17. And the saline agriculture says we have to, because 51% of the households are headed by women. So we always try to reach the women. The Water and Nutrition Working Groups uses community-based approaches, people-centered policies with a focus on the roles of women and men in the provision of water, food, and nutrition. Drought preparedness encourages a specific focus on women and children because they are the most vulnerable groups to drought. Sustainable agriculture takes as point of departure that women are responsible for water to survive. And finance says the role of women is essential, yet access to inputs or finance is less than that of men. And for migration, all their work is based on the human rights principles and social inclusion principles. One other very interesting question, or what we asked to the working groups, is whether they know about successful strategies. And this one I also would like to share, because we are always looking for strategies, and this is what we got from all the working groups. The saline agriculture says awareness is present, but lots needs to be done. I think that counts for all of us. Water and nutrition, they say, we support the group of investors, such as the African Union, but also USAID and IFAD and what have you. Drought preparedness, they use gender action planning and gender mainstreaming. Sustainable agriculture has 2 cases for their inspiration. And finance employs a human-centered design approach, and migration integrates the gender dimensions in all of their work. Now I'm going to describe the contents, and both Gerda and also Eduardo already mentioned many of these facts and figures, so I will go through them as quickly as possible. Overall in the world, 43% of the agricultural labor force is women, and they are responsible for producing 60 to 80% of the food. Smallholder family farms are the backbone of the national food supply, and most of this work is done by women, often invisible and not recognized. And let's make sure, after the words of Gerda, that they will become recognized. Then, due to a combination of population growth, socio and economic development, and the changing consumption patterns, the use of water in the world is increasing rapidly. This means that water is becoming scarce for billions of people. The link to water scarcity and migration is very complex, and because men leave and women stay behind. Climate change negatively impacts on all this. Women have less access to control and to land, and gender-based violence, unfortunately, is persistent and linked also to the ownership and access and use of the resources. And in case water is scarce, violence is increasing. And now we have the COVID-19, making the situation for women even worse. For example, in the informal sector, there are many women, and the impact is very high. Also on the impact on the food security at global, regional, and also at household level is very high, and it is envisaged that women will be hit harder. Nowadays, everybody is telling us, never waste a good crisis. I hope we will not waste this crisis to improve the position of women and girls. Back to the topics. All these topics are also golden opportunities for the WASAG partners to address them in their different roles as advocates, partners, expertise sharers, developing new solutions, etc. The first issue is governance, and there we can distinguish three different levels. At the local level, the focus will be on the inclusion of women in all phases of a project and ensure that they have the means to participate on the same footing as men. At the institutional level, the most important message is to be consistent if you want to improve the position of women. For example, management needs to walk the talk and implementers need to know it is a priority and that the means are available. At policy level, it is about implementing the many international declarations, such as the Dublin Principles, and creating the conditions for a systematic implementation of the policy. Governance is about decision-making, and nowadays we have learned that the 40-40-20 principle works. It means that 40% of the participants of meetings, teams, boardrooms is men, 40% is women, and 20% is free. In this setting, the voice of women is being heard. Gerda already talked about the importance of leadership. It's a key element, and also here it's easier said than done to get a sufficient number of women in leadership positions. But if it works, especially in the private sector, there are great examples that women make the difference. There is a huge increase in the performance of a company, and we see the same happening in a few water cases. Therefore, I'm often wondering, why is it not happening? The results count, isn't it? Just as an intermediate, we often talk about participation as one thing, but that is not true. We have 4 different levels of participation, and the most integrated level is level 4. These levels can change per phase. Another very essential topic is access to resources. Improvement of the position of women needs a budget, and we know that many projects and programs do not set money aside to integrate women. That is evidenced by a study of the OECD. Only 0.05% of the ODA funding goes to women and their organizations directly. Isn't that a shame? And at the same time, it's not difficult to change. Just set a budget aside to reach women. Another way to get sufficient means is gender-responsive budgeting. It means that in all aspects of a budget, gender concerns have been taken on board. And next to a budget, equal access to water, land, finance, extension services are also a prerequisite for success. And then the FAO has found out that there are amazing results. If women have the same access to productive resources as men, the yields increase by 20 to 30%. Nutrition improves and hunger reduces by up to 70%. Another cornerstone is sex disaggregated data. We need data because otherwise we have insufficient knowledge about what the women are doing. For example, how do women cope with water scarcity? How many women are living in water scarce area and how many men? How many women migrate and how many men, etc., etc. And next to collecting these data, you have to analyze them And you should not lose them by aggregating. And that's what you see happening in global reports. And then we know that at this moment, in terms of human resources, we do not have the capacity to achieve SDG 6. Again, a golden opportunity to include women and girls and provide them with the necessary knowledge and skills. Not only young women, also older ones like to learn. For example, in Uganda, women learn plumbing so that their water installations can be maintained. And with these skills, they started their own business. So it's really a win-win. But also here, appropriate funding is needed and curricula need to be adapted to the level of women and girls next to coaching and mentorship. I'm nearly there. The last thing is inclusion in all phases of the program cycle. It's for that you have to recognize that women have the knowledge and are experts because of their responsibilities. You have to understand gender in the context. You have to know whether your approach facilitates women foreigners, and you need gender expertise next to budget and sex disaggregated data. So to summarize, if you want to change the position, 5 essential elements are needed. Include women in governance processes and in the program cycle. Make sure budget is available as well as access to resources such as land and water. Enable women and girls to participate by providing vocational training and collect gender disaggregated data. If you work on all these elements, amazing results will be reached, as evidenced by FAO. The yields of farms will increase by 20 to 30%, nutrition improves, and hunger reduces. Isn't that a bright perspective? Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Anamika. With our last speaker, I'd like to invite our panelist, Ms. Michaela Maletto, the Acting Coordinator for UNESCO World Water Assessment Program, or the WAP. She leads the annual World Water Development Reports and is a familiar face to all of us, supporting member states to incorporate gender considerations into water policies. Michaela, would you like to give us a short remark? And we only have very few minutes left. And like to leave some for Q&A. So a short remark on the need for gender disaggregated data. I think a lot has been mentioned by Anamika, but if you can introduce the WAP toolkit and the gender response indicators, welcome to the floor.
But okay. Yeah, let's talk about sex disaggregated data, because these are so needed, but unfortunately in water resources management, it is very common and it is not a news that we don't have them. We have only, normally countries are not used to collect this kind of data. Think about only 1/3 of the world countries actually are regularly collecting this data. This has serious implications because, of course, this prevent us from shedding light to the power very often unequal, be it in water governance or water and agriculture and etc. So back to the questions, how to enhance sex disaggregated data collection and in reporting. I would be tempted to say, okay, let's remove the constraints, the causes that prevent us to collect. And we know these causes, and Anamika in the previous presentation already mentioned. One is the financial. It is expensive. It is expensive to do intra-housing surveys. it is expensive to do to carry out the gender analysis in the field. So we need resources, human resources, and we need, of course, financial resources. Another important aspect is the skills. We don't have the skills to properly collect this data, because it is not easy, and not only is a matter of collection, but also a matter of analyzing the information so that you can actually complement the policies, you can inform the plannings, you can inform the projects and the national programs or regional programs even. Another constraint is, of course, the willingness for cooperation, because this information are not from a unique sector. You need to gather information from different sectors. So you need cooperation among institutions, with academias, with associations, and look for this data. From what we heard during the previous presentations, women limited access to productive resources limits agriculture productivity, and so forth, which is one of the most important reasons to migrate, in particular in water scarce areas, and women are poorly entitled to agricultural resources like water and land, and also have little time, because they have to do other things to generate income. Sometimes, due to gender norms, women cannot have less mobility rather than respect to men. And also, in case of natural disaster, they are not allowed to acquire necessary skills to react appropriately. You think about cultures in which, for instance, women cannot learn to swim, which is very important in case of natural disaster, regarding floods, etc., storms. And all this to say that we don't have, at the end of the day, nowadays, we still don't have authorities or international standards that collect data on women participation in different instances. So what do we shall do? I think that what we really need is, at the fundamental level, is basic methods, questionnaires, guidelines, indicators, and that could create the baseline for water and gender. There are a few examples. One example is, of course, the WAP toolkit, which has been developed by a multi-stakeholder working group, including FAO, Women for Water Partnership, and many others, which includes methodology, includes questionnaires, but in particular includes indicators, 105 indicators that are gender responsive and address specific topics from FAO, but also climate change mitigation and the relation with lack of employment and migration, or forced displacement in case of natural disasters. So these are at least some tools that could be used in the absence of a international standard. In addition to these tools available, or to the where to gather data, because this is very important also to know how to gather data, but also where to gather data. We can also think to have more creative investigation using not traditional data, for instance, geospatial data, combined with cell phones, also remote sensing, satellite, crowdsources data, or even citizen-generated data that could actually support the research for statistical purposes, and in particular to look at the interactions rather than the interconnection between water and genders only. So this is a little bit in a nutshell, very quickly and without slides, but I hope that could be useful for a debate after this. Over to you, Sasha.
Thank you very much, Michaela. And I applaud to all the speakers and presenters today. And with the remaining 7 minutes for a short Q&A, I received the questions in the chat box. So I will open the questions to all of you who would like to respond. One question is how training can be implemented in a manner that women from the global south do not depend on aid and become agents or champions, and how do they become agents and champions in their own communities? And then the second question is relating to the role of women in water resource management in the global north, not just the south, and are there any efforts to collect sex disaggregated data on the role of women in water management? Over to the speakers and the partners of from the Women for Water Partnership. Anamika?
Yes, yeah, the first question about vocational training, yes, unfortunately, often women of these type of trainings depend on money from development cooperation, but there are also opportunities in the countries, in many countries. And I think, well, what Gerda said also, just be determined that you want to have a training and ask and look for it and look for opportunities in your country, and give them also notices that they need to adapt the situation also to the position of women. So I cannot give a general answer to your general question, but I think that there are many ways. If you want to have a training, try to look for it, and and maybe also if you can't approach Women for Water Partnership, we have many members in many countries, and maybe we can help you.
Thank you. Would you like to make any intervention, Michaela?
Yeah, yes, I totally agree with Anamika. There is already a network all around the world, so that that is able to support for trainings, and also now, especially with the COVID, we realized that it's very useful to have online communications, like online webinars, etc. It's very easy, and in this world, it's very nice to have inputs from everywhere. So, and in terms of other trainings, or for instance, sex disaggregated data, the second questions on the global north. Well, I don't know if there is, in particular in the US, there is a particular specific collection of this information on water resources management. I know that many universities actually are working on this data. Some of them have been participated in the development of the indicators and the toolkit with the methodology, etc. So, and I know that has been used also for modules in the academia, in the classes. So I think that, as I said before, this kind of data should be gathered in different institutions, in different entities, not only the Minister of Water, or you have to look around and to get the most of the other non-traditional data.
Thank you. And I have one burning question from the chair of WASAG, is how much global work is there and effort in coordinating the implementation of SDG 6 and 5 on water and gender equality around the world to improve the role of women in water management? Would you please respond in the shortest fashion possible?
Maybe I can think there's, in terms of advocacy, there is a lot of work is being done to link SDG 5 and 6. For example, Women for Water, we are at all major UN conferences and we give this message, but it's not yet enough. And especially in implementation is lagging behind. So that is where we have to focus on.
Thank you. I'd like to now hand the floor to Mr. Mansour for closing remarks. And thank you all again.
Thank you, Sasha. Unfortunately, the time wins when we have this Zoom seminars. Colleagues, this was meant to be, when we first discussed this within the WASAG, a full workshop, presential workshop, where we would have working groups addressing the very important questions that have been posed. The questions are there. They are listed in the chat. It's difficult to address them in the context we have, but we had 3 inspiring presentations that especially Gerda was politically very motivating. Then we had the reality within the Women for Water, and the kind and very informative presentation of Michaela in terms of data. It revealed the set of importance, things that we already knew and are not resolved, the issue of the disaggregated data, things that are pressing us against the new reality, with how we face the challenge that are now put stressed, especially on the households, for women to have further attention to hygiene and sanitation, while she has continued to provide in the conditions that they are working, and issues that are mid to long term on resolving, like the one raised by Torkel, our dear chair, regarding the links between the SDG 5 and the SDG 6. I think we had an enormous set of motivation here, and I hope that we will build from this into another stage of interaction. I noticed a strong participation from all over the world, about 200 people attending. That reveals the interest on the topic, the urgency in having a solution to this. And I trust that our colleagues in the EST division here in FAO that deals with the topics, and we that deal with natural resources with a focus on the gender issues, we will be able to respond to some of this with our partners. I would like to thank you very much on behalf of the FAO, and it has been an honor and very illustrative to be here with you today. Back to you, Sasha.
Thank you. So this concludes the seminar, and the video will be made available, and we will answer the questions if we had not the time to get to it. Thank you again to the speakers, and a round of applause. Unfortunately, you can't hear the audience, but at least from us in the front office. Thank you.
I think what Rosaidis put in there in the slide is the next webinar.
That's right. Just to follow through, for those who are still on the line, we are offering 2 more seminars on the WASAG. The second one would be on saline agriculture, scaling up opportunities and challenges on May 26th, same time, 3:00 p.m. in Europe. Water and soil management in salt-affected areas on June 2nd. It is listed here, and look forward to welcome you all again. Bye now.